Why old Seiko watches are worth more than you think. If you're in the market for a new watch, you might consider an old Seiko watch over one from today's market. While that may seem counterintuitive initially, there are plenty of good reasons to go with this option. First and foremost, Seiko watches have always been known for their high-quality craftsmanship and attention to detail, which is readily apparent in even the older models of these watches. This article will help you determine how much your old Seiko watch is worth, so you can make the best decision about whether or not to invest in a new one. History of Seiko watches. Seiko watches have a long and storied history, dating back to 1881 when Kintaro Hattori founded the Kei Hattori Company in Tokyo. Seiko Watch Corporation, Ltd. is a Japanese watch manufacturing company. It was established in 1881, with its headquarters in Tokyo, Japan. The company produces watches, clock parts and instruments, camera parts, semiconductors, optical lenses, and other industrial products. Seiko also deals in quartz timepieces, kinetic art, high-end traditional crafts, flat panel displays, and advanced robotics. The history of Seiko watches began in 1881 when Kintaro Hattori opened a shop selling Western clocks and pocket watches. Kintaro Hattori was the founder of Seiko Watch Corporation Ltd. Or simply Seiko, which means exquisite or success in Japanese. In 1895 Kintaro Hattori produced affordable pocket watches using automatic winding mechanisms. This enabled him to sell his timepieces at an affordable price, which helped him establish his business as one of the largest watchmakers in Japan till 1913. By 1924, Seiko had become a significant player in Japan's burgeoning watch industry and had opened factories around the country to meet the demand for its products. And for the first time introduces its name Seiko Watch Company Ltd. In 1969, Seiko's first quartz watch was released, leading to their first automatic chronograph in 1975. They continued building a history in watches, including the world's first kinetic energy rechargeable battery watch, Kinetic, 1988, the world's thinnest automatic winding wristwatch, Spring Drive, 2005, and the world's first e-ink watch, 2010. This technological innovation helped make Seiko watches more affordable and accessible to consumers around the globe. Today, old Seiko watches are highly sought after by collectors due to their quality craftsmanship and unique design. Depending on the model and condition, an old Seiko watch can be worth anywhere from a few hundred to a few $1,000s. What to do if you get an old Seiko watch as a gift? If you're lucky enough to receive an old Seiko watch as a gift, you can do a few things to ensure you're getting the most value out of it. Research the model and find out how old it is. Check for any damage and have it serviced if necessary. Please take it to a reputable jeweler to get an appraisal. With a little effort, you can be sure you're getting the most out of your valuable Seiko watch. Models of Seiko watches and their value. Seiko watches are known for their reliability, accuracy, and durability. While Seiko is best known for its quartz models, they also produce automatic and mechanical watches. Seiko 6309. In the world of watches, there are a lot of different brands and models to choose from. One of the most popular brands is Seiko. The Seiko 6309 is a trendy watch among watch collectors. This model was made in the early 1970s and was designed for professional divers. The case is made of stainless steel, and it has a screw-down back with a transparent case back. The dial has a date display at 3 o'clock and luminous hands and markers. The Seiko 6309 is one of their most popular models because it has an automatic movement. The automatic movement means that it will keep running on its own without having to be wound by hand as some other watches do. It also can be worn while swimming or snorkeling since it can withstand water pressure up to 330 feet deep, 150 meters. The movement of this watch is the famous 7C46 automatic movement with 17 jewels, which was used by many other watches in those days. The value of this watch depends on its condition, but it's estimated that you can get $500 to $900 for one in good condition. Seiko 6106 or 6119 Rally Diver. The Seiko 6106 or 6119 Rally Diver is a great watch that has been around for years. It has a stainless steel case and band with an analog display. It has a rotating bezel, which makes it ideal for diving and other water sports are water resistant to 70 meters. The watch has an automatic movement and calendar function, luminous hands, and markers for easy reading underwater or in low light conditions. The Seiko 6106 or 6119 Rally Diver has become increasingly popular and is one of the most sought-after vintage watches available today. This model has been discontinued for quite some time, but many are still available on eBay at very reasonable prices. Has been known to sell for upwards of $350 to $500 in excellent condition. Seiko 6159 Tuna. This is a watch that the Japanese watchmaker, Seiko, makes. It has been in production for over 30 years and has been the most popular model in their collection. The model was first introduced in 1976, and it was instantly a hit with collectors and enthusiasts alike. The design of this model is inspired by some of the most expensive brands in the world, such as Rolex, Omega, and Patek Philippe. The design features a cushion-shaped case with a diameter of 40 mm and thickness of 12 mm, making it a pretty large watch for those who prefer smaller watches. The case is made from stainless steel with a brushed finish on top of it so that there are no marks or scratches left after prolonged use of this watch. The dials on these watches are made from stainless steel, which has been treated with an anti-reflective coating to make them easier to read when used under bright lights or sunlight. They have been given markers at each hour position around their face so that you can easily see them. The 6159 is not easy to find in good condition, but if you find one, it's probably worth between $1,000 and $3,000. Seiko 7-Ax Quartz Chronograph. The Seiko 7-Ax is a high-quality quartz clock, which means that it can measure time intervals and display it on a digital face. Seiko made it in Japan. The model 7-Ax is part of the 7 series, which includes other models such as the 7A28 and 7A38 with different features, but all were manufactured between 1982 and 1986. The Seiko 7-Ax Quartz Chronograph watches are probably the most popular of Seiko's newer mechanical/quartz hybrid models. The 7-Ax series includes the 7A28, 7A28-7000, 7A28-7002, and 7A28-7003. The main difference between each model is the dial color, black versus blue, and case material, stainless steel versus titanium. The 7-Ax has an outer case made from stainless steel for durability and protection against corrosion. The inner case is made from stainless steel or gold-plated brass, depending on your preference. The watch is powered by an analog quartz movement that keeps accurate time without needing battery changes or adjustments. You can get this watch from the market for $200 to $300, which makes it one of the most affordable quartz clocks on the market today. How to identify if your watch is an original/vintage model. Seiko models from the 60s onward can be worth considerable money as with any other vintage watch. If you're looking to sell or trade in your old Seiko, don't just throw it in with the rest of your collection. Take some time to examine your watch and identify whether it's an original model or a reproduction. The first step to identifying if your watch is an original/vintage model is to check the back of the watch case. The model name will be engraved into the steel case in most cases. If it doesn't say Seiko on the back, there's a good chance it's incorrect for this article. If you have a model number that starts with 6309-7040, then you have a first-generation Grand Seiko. Here are some other ways to identify if your watch is an original/vintage model. Check the serial number. If your serial number starts with a 6 or 7, it's probably a first-generation Grand Seiko. If it has an in front of the serial number, it was produced between 1970 and 1975, a 1 prefix. In addition, A2 prefix serial numbers were used between 1975 and 1980, and B1 prefix serial numbers were used between 1980 and 1985. Check the movement number. Seiko has used many movements over the years, but they all fall into two categories, automatic and quartz. If your watch has an automatic movement, also known as a self-winding movement, it will have one of the following numbers on its back: 7S26, 7S36, 7S55, or 4R15. If it has a quartz movement, also known as battery-operated, it will have one of these numbers on its back: 6R15 or 4R36. You can find them by removing the dial or bracelet and looking at the back of the watch through an opening in its case back cover. Check the dial printing and hand design. The dial printing should be clean and clear with no smudging or fading. If there are any signs of fading or smudging, then there's a high chance that it's not an original model. If there is no sign of fading or smudging on your dial, but there's a spelling mistake in the printing, this could mean that it's not from an authorized dealer selling authentic Seiko watches. What makes some Seiko watches more valuable than others? There are a few ways to find out the value of your old Seiko watch. The first is to look up the watch in a vintage Seiko watch price guide. This will give you an idea of what the watch is worth. You can also try searching for the watch online. There are many reasons why some Seiko watches are more valuable than others. Seiko's history is rich and complex, but a few key factors make some Seiko watches more valuable than others. In the 1960s and 1970s, Seiko was one of the first companies to produce quartz watches on a large scale. This technology quickly became the standard in the watch industry, and many other brands worldwide adopted it. Quartz watches are much more accurate than mechanical ones because they're powered by electricity rather than winding or springs. Another reason that vintage Seiko models are valuable is because of their durability. Seiko watches are known for their durability and accuracy. This makes them incredibly popular among watch collectors who want a watch that will last for decades without fail. After all, you can't expect your watch to last forever if you don't take care of it properly. That's why we recommend cleaning your watch with warm water and soap every once in a while to keep dust from getting inside of it. It's also essential to remove any moisture from your watch before putting it away for storage or travel. Many vintage models were produced in limited numbers, making them even more sought after by collectors. These watches can often be found on websites such as eBay and Craigslist or from private sellers online and offline. You may also find them at antique stores or pawn shops if you're lucky enough to live near one. Seiko releases limited edition watches every year, but not all of these limited edition models are worth collecting or investing in. What makes an older watch a good investment? As you may know, Seiko's watch's value has increased over the years. But what makes an older watch a good investment? For one, the quality of vintage Seiko watches is excellent. The company has been making watches for over 100 years, and their experience shows in the craftsmanship of their products. Additionally, because Seiko watches are mass-produced, they're more affordable than other luxury brands, yet they still hold their value well. In fact, according to this vintage Seiko watch price guide, some models can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. So if you're looking for a solid investment that will give you years of enjoyment, consider adding a vintage Seiko watch to your collection. One thing I've learned from my research is that there are collectors who collect all sorts of brands of vintage Seiko watches. Many people only know about Rolex and Omega for collectible watches, but there's also interest in these old-school styles. As more people start collecting these old Seiko timepieces, the value increases even more, so if you have any sitting around collecting dust, it might be worth trying to find out their worth before they become rarer. Key factors that affect value of old Seiko watches. Some of the most common factors that make an older model more valuable include: the condition of the watch. The condition of your watch is one of the most critical factors in determining its value. If it's been damaged or has any issues with its appearance, it probably won't be worth as much as it could be otherwise. This applies even if there isn't any visible damage. Even minor scratches can make a big difference regarding the resale value and overall appeal. Age. The older a vintage Seiko watch is, the higher its value becomes. However, this doesn't mean that you should look for those with high serial numbers or those produced during special occasions only because they may not be in good condition. Instead, look for ones that were produced during regular years and can still be worn today without causing any damage to them. The history of the watch. A documented history of where it has been and who owned it can make a watch more valuable because it adds to its history and increases its desirability. The history of the watch is an essential factor that determines its value. If it has been in your family for generations, it will have more sentimental value than if you bought it from a store last week. An old Seiko watch can be worth more than a newer one because it has more history. The rarity of the watch model. If your Seiko watch is rare or limited, it will be worth more than an ordinary model. For example, owning one of the first Seiko watches can increase its value significantly. However, if it's just a regular model from a relatively recent series, it won't be as valuable as a limited edition one from an older one. Suppose there are not many other people who own this particular model. In that case, it becomes more desirable because there are fewer available to buy from other sellers on eBay or in other places online where collectors of vintage Seiko watches may look for them. Special feature. Some watches have unique features that make them more valuable than other models. For example, if your watch has an automatic chronograph function, a stopwatch, it will be more valuable than a similar model without this feature. Other notable features include date displays, moon phase displays, and perpetual calendars. Movement. The caliber of a watch determines its accuracy and durability, as well as the complexity of its design. Newer movements tend to be less accurate than older ones because they use fewer parts and require less maintenance than older models. A vintage Seiko 5 Sports with a 6206 movement is worth thousands of dollars, while an identical model with a newer 9S66 can easily be bought for less than $100. Where to sell old Seiko watches? There are a few websites that specialize in selling old watches. Finally, you can take the watch to a local jeweler or antique store and have them appraise it for you. If you have an old Seiko watch that you no longer wear or use, you may wonder what to do with it. You may have even tried to sell it at a pawn shop or on eBay, but you probably got an offer nowhere near what the watch is worth. Fortunately, several other options exist for those looking to unload an old Seiko watch. Sell old watches on eBay. The first option for selling old Seiko watches is eBay. If your watch is one of the more popular models, such as the Seiko 5 or 6 or 15, you should have no problem finding buyers on eBay. However, if your watch was made before 1960 and was not designed by Seiko, it will be harder to sell because most people are only interested in buying newer models of the same brand. Sell your vintage watch on Craigslist. Craigslist is another option for selling your old Seiko watches. This free online classified site allows people to post ads for anything from jobs to apartments and everything in between. If you want to sell your vintage Seiko watches quickly and easily, Craigslist is probably your best bet as long as they still work correctly and are in good condition overall. Where to buy old Seiko watches? There are many reasons why people love Seiko watches, but one of the main reasons is that they have a good reputation for being durable. They also come with a warranty that lasts up to 2 years, and they are easy to repair if they break down while you own them. These are just some of the reasons why people love buying Seiko watches. Several online retailers sell vintage Seiko watches. Some sellers have extensive inventories of vintage Seiko watches, while others have a small selection of only a few different models. You can find new and used versions of these watches on eBay, Amazon, and other online marketplaces. Your local antique store. Some antique stores sell old Seiko watches because they are trendy among collectors and those who like antiques. The price will depend on how old it is and whether or not it still works appropriately or needs repairs before it can be used again. Online auction sites. You can find old Seiko watches on auction sites like eBay or Amazon Marketplace because people sell them there. You should always check the seller's return policy before purchasing an item from eBay or Amazon. If something goes wrong with your watch and you need to return it, you don't want to be out any money if the seller won't refund your purchase price or send you another one in exchange for yours. Final words. Seiko watches are indeed both trendy and durable. However, with the proper knowledge, you can decide if you want to buy a new one or find a vintage piece at an affordable price. The best way to enjoy your old Seiko watches is by wearing them or taking them to a watchmaker trained and licensed to work on these vintage pieces. It also makes good sense as a collector's item and investment. The market for good vintage Seiko watches will only increase in the coming years, and prices for the more collectible pieces are expected to keep going up.